and I have a team of 5 engineers that report up to me currently, and we have 2 open positions that we're recruiting for now, of which this is one. My team has a lot of traditional data center stuff, physical compute, hypervisor, storage arrays, backup recovery technologies, those kinds of things, traditional stuff. And we are beginning our cloud journey. So we're looking to get started into cloud and have added 2 positions to our team, an architect and an engineer position. So we're looking to bring on some staff. Most of my team have been here 15, 20 years. So we haven't had an opportunity to get firsthand experience. They've done a lot of training, book training and some different classes. So they're familiar with the technologies and super excited, but definitely don't have the skill set to come out the gate punching. So looking to bring someone on to help us with that journey. And I report up to say hello. I'm going to make sure Joe had this on his calendar.
Yeah, good afternoon. Is that Charles?
Yeah.
Is that
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Make sure I had you right there. Mike Bridgen, like Phil mentioned, looking for some Azure expertise to come in and help us on our journey to cloud, hybrid cloud. We don't necessarily feel like everything needs to move into Azure, but there are probably right use cases around that. Phil was one of my managers. I have 2 additional managers. I think Windows Server team, Citrix, and our EMR. My team supports the back end of that as well, from database to application delivery. My other manager deals with database platforms as well as Unix, Linux. So I'm very fortunate. I've got great leaders, and I also have a great team that's been with me a long time, and just excited to potentially add on to that team with someone who can mesh with us and help us grow.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, pleasure to meet you guys. My name is Jonte Charles. I've been in, but I go by Charles clearly. But I've been in the cloud space probably about 8 years or so at this point. I've worked across all 3 of the big 3 cloud service providers. And even now presently, like I'm doing landing zone build outs for migrations and so on. And it comes with a mixture of like infrastructure as code as well as ad hoc stuff too. But the use cases will vary based on the team that I'm supporting for their effort. But I mean, based on what I'm hearing, you guys are relatively new to that process and you're just now adopting whatever cloud service provider you're moving with presently, correct?
Yeah, so it'll be Azure from a Microsoft standpoint. We've had a partner over many, I don't know, maybe five months-ish that we've been partnered with to come up with a landing zone design, hub-spoke model around networking, management resource groups. I mean, so following all Microsoft's best practices around the Microsoft space.
Yeah.
And we're getting to the point, we're working on ExpressRoute within our data centers. We have 2 data centers today. I expect those to stay around in some form or fashion. So we're working on ExpressRoute to provide connectivity. We'll have VPN as a backup service to that for Microsoft space. So and I'd say probably 85-90% done with landing zone. We're at the point now where we're starting to talk about security hardening, CIS controls, compliancy for our Azure tenant. So just be curious to share, maybe a little about yourself, kind of what you've been working on. Phil, did Joel say he was on his way, or is he wrapped up? He may have gotten pulled into another meeting.
Yeah, I'm suspecting he might have. I'll ping him on Teams. He was on the invite, so.
Okay.
But I'll ping him just to see.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So that sounds like literally right up my wheelhouse. Like with one project, we're trying to finish up a landing zone build out now. Like I've built out landing zones from scratch, like from end to end before. I have architecture diagrams from network management group and so on and so forth on my GitHub. So I don't know if you do have my resume up in front of you, but if you go to my GitHub, you could just see like all the stuff that I've done there. But they did theirs a little bit out of order. They're kind of doing their benchmarks and policies as they're still building things in the environment, which is what I advise them not to do, because you're never really going to be in compliance, because you're going to keep building stuff and then you're going to be like, oh, well, we want to get our score up, or and it's like, dude, you keep building stuff. But yeah, I've been there before and I've done that before, both manually as well as with infrastructure as code, and of course like for various use cases as well too. So that sounds right up my alley at this point.
Cool. Talk to me real quickly about management groups and subscriptions and how you use those to delegate or allocate permissions, like RBAC type controls.
Yeah. So it all depends on like how the team is going to categorize their subscriptions. Of course, there's Microsoft best practice as well too, but just because there's Microsoft best practice, that doesn't mean that it's going to align with the organizational standards or desires as well as what they're even going to be putting in the subscriptions. But for the most part, you want to group your subscriptions together in some logical fashion. For instance, let's say you have like a lab, dev, UAT, prod. Perhaps you want to group those under particular management groups because you're going to have different policies that you wish to apply to those management groups. All right, you're probably going to have a set of policies that you're going to apply at the tenant root level, but you're also still going to have a set of policies or initiatives that you'll apply based on the environments that you care about. But for the most part, you probably want to shove all of your pre-landing zone subscriptions into a management group by themselves, and then build out all of your new Microsoft best practice subscriptions segregated from that, so you can delineate between the two, and then potentially slowly migrate your policy initiatives to your older or more legacy subscriptions. But that's how I've done it in the past. That's how I'd tell somebody to do it now.
Gotcha. One of the other things that we're trying to get our hands around are FinOps related to Azure financial operations. Within your deployments, how have you, so my team's infrastructure, we have a network team, we have an AI team who will be driving AI Foundry kind of things. We have a variety of different cost centers. So Mike President's team doesn't necessarily pay for everything, that is Azure. We're going to try to break out costs based on like networking and Palo and those types of things.
Right.
Can you talk to me real briefly, how would you accomplish that?
Tagging first. You got to have a baseline set of tags for their environments. You got to have a billing code and so on and so forth. So when the FinOps people come in, you're just exporting all of your billing data for them to shove in some type of Power BI or so on and so forth for their billing analysis. But tagging for sure. And you definitely want to establish whatever your tagging policy is before you start building things. But yeah,
kind of different than what you were talking about earlier, where the company person that you were working with was kind of developing policies that go, and they are not able to actually get on top of what the policy looks like as they're continuing to try to mature. Right. Yep. Looks like Joe has also joined us. I don't know, Joe, if you want to introduce yourself. This is Charles. We've had opportunity to go through introductions and maybe just ask a few quick Azure questions.
Yeah, Charles, nice to meet you. I sincerely apologize for being late. It didn't sync with my calendar for some reason, and so it wasn't for any lack of respect or lack of intention towards this interview. I do really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us, and so please accept my apology on that behalf. I like your Shure SM7B microphone, if that's what it is.
Yep, that's it.
Looks great, sounds great, and so very cool. And so my name is Joel Stieg. I serve really two roles here. I'm on the AI team as an architect, navigating the AI landscape here in healthcare and how it's integrating across the organization, and also serve as principal enterprise architect, where I lead a group of architects thinking through things like strategy, and then even down to the design side in some cases. And so that's newer, the enterprise architecture team. So we're seeing what that looks like specifically here for. I think you'll see a resounding theme through here is designing with intention and appropriateness towards our medical center, and just where we sit just geographically within the country. And so hopefully that introduces me. If you don't mind, you probably already did this, but if I just get the 30-second recap on you, where you're at, a little bit of your experience, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah. So I've been in the cloud space about 8 years or so now, but I've worked across Azure, AWS, and GCP from an engineering and architect perspective, primarily like the architect perspective on the Azure side. But you could probably throw me in like GCP or any AWS environment. I'll still be competent there. But right now I'm working on a couple different projects. So right now we're finishing out a landing zone build out and / migration on the Azure side, and for GCP, I'm building out a automated secrets rotation environment for Microsoft SQL or Cloud SQL on the GCP side, and that's the main two that I got going, and then like a whole bunch of like ad hoc stuff in between there with like Azure DevOps and other team initiatives.
Awesome. Okay. Well, nice to meet you, and thanks for walking us through that. And is it okay if I just get into it, or did you want to finish off any questions you were asking or line of thought?
Yeah, no, you can get into it, Joe. We talked through management subscriptions. We're getting ready to get into some additional questions, but you can go through your list just for standardization purposes if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, just kind of give me a high level landing zone, what considerations you have when you're designing one. Have you worked in a healthcare environment? Is healthcare going to be a transition for you? Kind of talk through just landing zones in general, what your thoughts are, what are, you hit on one or two like best practices that you would integrate into one. Really, we're just trying to gauge your depth of knowledge when it comes to landing zone design and deployment in an Azure environment.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you did get here a little bit later. I do have like a link to my GitHub on my resume that'll show you some of the landing zones that I've built. So they come with their architecture diagram, network diagram, also some of the source code, some of the source code as well. Some of them were manual and some of them were like either with Terraform or Bicep. But for the most part, I probably consider like the networking setup first. Like if somebody's just going to do like a traditional hub and spoke, or if they were considering doing a mesh. But for the most part, if it was like a traditional hub and spoke, figure out how they're going to segregate the environments. Like if we're talking like very simple and you just have like a dev staging prod and you have like 3 subscriptions, maybe a 4th one for your hub or for your management or shared hub objects, maybe that too. But for the most part, you want to have your subscriptions all pointing to your hub, and have your hub have your shared resources like your log analytics, your DNS, your key vaults, your bastion, your shared storage account for potentially your state management if you're using Terraform to deploy the environment. And then think about what actual workloads are going to go where. Because I mean, you might have an AI effort as well too. Maybe you need an AI subscription that also needs its dev, staging, prod, whatever. But I would say start there, and then also I'd consider like what the firewall tool is. Are you going to use Azure Firewall? Do you have like a Panorama setup? Are you going to be using like Checkpoint or something? Do you have like, are you planning to do site to site? Are you planning to do express route? Do you have time for express route? Those are some things that would come to mind.
How would you, where would infrastructure as a code play into that in terms of standardization?
I would say it first comes down to like timeline for that. Like now with the project that I'm on, they are like, we're already a good portion of the way through deploying their landing zone without IAC. And the reason was they didn't want to invest time into properly setting up their Terraform configuration, meaning having the runners, having the modules, having a formal change review process, and how that meshes with the like change request process that they already have. So the first thing I would ask is like, do you have time to do all of that? And then also, once you build it, who's going to own the whole process? And also who's going to abide by the process? Because once you're like locked in with the IAC piece, it's like you don't want to do a mixture of like half and half. Like, so those are what I would think of. But as far as like the technical details and implementations of like the Terraform repository architecture, or maybe the pipeline architecture, there's a variety of different ways to do it. But high level, that's what I would think of first before we get into those details.
Yeah, I love that you start with the business and the outcome before you start, brain dumping or diving into the technology. And so it just shows that you're seasoned and you've done this before. So that's really cool. How would you interact with another technology group, such as security, that has the perception that you're only secure if you're deploying through infrastructure as code, and you need to balance that against a tighter timeline like you had described? How would you navigate having that conversation in a way that's outcome focused?
I would probably start with referencing the documentation, and then also I would have more questions about their thought process behind why they think something is secure just because it's deployed with IAC. So I'd probably try to understand where that stems from and why they think that, and then also try and steer them in the direction of the validity of the docs that Microsoft produce. Like technically you could kind of just like read everything from Microsoft and learn everything Azure, but do you want to read that? And are you going to be reading the right things, or the question, because it's going to take a while? But I'll probably steer them in the direction of that. Like just because something's deployed manually or via the console, that doesn't mean it's out of compliance. And even then, when you slap some policy on top of that, then there's an even bigger justification for something being in compliance with the benchmark that you care about. So I would probably start the conversation by maybe an open review session of what the best practice and documentation says from Microsoft, and why I think that abiding by that is generally a good decision.
I love it. So your approach is to start with the customer, meet them where they're at, create an objective standard. I'm just paraphrasing what you said, and then working towards a solution. Brilliant. Thank you for walking us through that. And so where we are with our landing zone, I'll contextualize this. There is that tug and pull between skill sets and operational capacity and the need to deploy cloud workloads because of things like features in the AI space, or a vendor is only offering SaaS moving forward and you need to deploy in the cloud space. Let's say that we're up against we're kind of transitioning to more leadership type questions, because clearly you're technically competent. I don't need to drill you with 1,000 questions on hundreds of services. Yeah, good job there. So let's talk through a scenario where something came in at the last minute. It's unsupportable. There's an exploitable bit of code and or a patch level. The server can't be patched anymore. It's out of memory. It's out of capacity, whatever you want to say. There's no documentation for this system. And we need to make a determination on whether to move it to the cloud or how to remediate it on-prem. Just kind of how would you navigate those conversations? What would your considerations be to help guide the best outcome for the org?
Well, my first thought is like, this thing has been around for a while. Mentally, I'm grouping it in the legacy sector. Like, this has been deployed without following potentially a set of guidelines and documentations for it, but it's working and it saves money or makes money. So you can't really complain about it too much because it hasn't like caused a huge problem yet. But my first thought would be, let's look at the paths that we have. If we leave it on premise, whoever owns its job would be to get up to speed in terms of the documentation, how it's used, why it's used, and really being able to present to external parties why this is the way that it is. Whoever's already in ownership needs to probably step up and take ownership of that object. That's the first route, I think. Second route is if they go, okay, well, let's put it into the cloud and then figure it out from there. Someone still has to own it. And I don't think that the people who are going to be owning the workloads in Azure would agree with that. I probably wouldn't agree with that either. I wouldn't want to migrate a unsecure / faulty application into the cloud platform where I would have to take responsibility for, especially if it's not already documented anyways. But then you'd have to consider, does this make the company money or does this save the company money? And if so, whoever already owns it, are they willing to accept that risk for the saving or making of money? Because if it was my team, I'd be like, hey, I do not want to take ownership of this if there's no documentation or ledger anywhere for us to really follow. At that point, we'd just be starting from scratch, but it would just be in the cloud. And how would that really like change the outcome anyways? Like, I would probably push back on that pretty hard unless there's like architecture diagrams, network diagrams, some long documentation of like how it works, and why it hasn't like caused a giant issue yet. But I'll probably push back pretty heavily on just migrating that, to be honest.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, fantastic job. Mike and Philip, do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, I was curious. Looks like you've had, looking through your resume, you're with Nokia currently. Any particular reason you're looking for a switch or a change at this point?
Yeah, the way Nokia operates is you're a contractor forever unless you come in W-2. I will never work for them like full time. That's just how the politics work. And I'm open to other engagements, and that's just what it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's great. Again, this is a contract to hire role. I have as I said, everyone says this, but I really do have an exceptional team. Happy to share, if it gets to that point, engagement surveys and things like that kind of show the team satisfaction. It's not unusual to have staff, guys that have been on my team 15, 20 years, that's usually the norm on Mike's org and my team specifically, than not. One of the things that we're excited about here in this opportunity is they're still hungry for technology. They still get excited and are inspired by that. And they are really enthusiastic about the opportunity to have someone come on board that can help lead and pull us into those. Pull is probably the wrong word, but help provide some guidance into our cloud journey and some maturity that already has some maturity and can help bring along there. Can you kind of speak maybe to the teams you've worked on, and kind of asking, have they been collaborative? Have you been a senior on those teams, and how those teams have functioned, and kind of what you enjoy? Because our hope would be that this role would be someone that would enjoy maybe leading out a little bit with bringing the team along with them, helping educate. It's not a formal requirement of the job, but helping educate the rest of the team members and kind of bring everyone along on the journey.
Yeah. So like my current team, the way it's set up is like we have a core group of about 8, and then based on the projects from the teams around us that are either doing like migration or build outs or management of their cloud resources, will get divvied out on like a pod basis. So it'll be like 1 or 2 of us on this larger scale project, and then we'll still have ad hoc things that'll come to our team that we'll manage as well. So for all intents and purposes, it's like 1 or 2 guys on like a big project. So you're either defaulted to working in that pod of 2 or bringing it back to the overall team if it's like a position, not a position, but a problem that you don't necessarily have the answer to immediately. Now, I would say, I guess, as far as the leadership piece, like I've been around enough to know that, hey, I've seen something and done something before. And the same way that I'm like approaching some of the questions that you have, like if I can say, hey, I've already done this before, here's what it looks like, and here's why I think the way that I think, like similarly with like me referencing my GitHub and so on and so forth. That's the same way that I'll approach problems. And like sometimes it'll be like proactive, right? Like this same project, they're thinking about doing a Databricks deployment. I've done a Databricks deployment, so I can like show it to them and be like, hey, I've done this before. Here are some things proactively that you may want to consider. So I'll try to approach it more as a set of proactive steps to see how it's received by the team, because you don't just like come into a team and just be like, oh, I think this is the way we should do this, right? You still have to show value and then see the response and so on and so forth.
Yeah, great answer. I love how you approach that, right? Bringing your experience, right? Demonstrating the experience and the successes or failures are there. And I think that's a great way to approach that. Want to make sure we have some time, we can definitely keep chatting, but I want to make sure you have some time for any questions that you have about the organization, the team, or kind of what our journey is.
Yeah. So I know you had mentioned you're working with a partner, and if I'm not mistaken, you said you were just about through with your landing zone piece. Like, did you do this like manually? Was there ISC involved? Like, what was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, it's a lot of Terraform. They've built out most everything in Terraform, so that's great. We did a dev deployment landing zone with them previously that was really rushed, bare bones, not very super well thought out, but just we had actually received some grant money, and it's like, hey, can you have this tomorrow? So we went through that with them, and they did Terraform there and handed that over, and so now we're going through our prod landing zone and trying to be much more thoughtful and mature about how we approach that. One thing that I really enjoy this organization is that my director and the team as a whole, we've really, have balanced the timetable of needing to turn this around with trying to be really thoughtful and come out with a mature methodology versus just deploying something and then living with the consequences in 6 months to a year. So we've taken a little bit of extra time that we probably didn't have to spend on that, but we've really been thoughtful in how we're kicking off this so that we kind of come out the gate in something that we can manage long term.
Nice.
Yeah, we have been very dependent on, we've got Joel here now, and Joel's been with us for 6 months, thereabout, and we have been very dependent on this partner just because we didn't have internal resources.
Right.
So as we went through a design process, as we get towards the end of the landing zone deployment, we'll have a punch list of things, whether it be security, we want to continue to mature and actually stand up our own IAC platform, probably Azure DevOps. Although Terraform was used to deploy this and we have that code, we want to continue to mature that and not do right-click ops, going forward. So one of the roles of this will be to help us continue to mature and do the right thing here, working through our punch list, making sure our standards are there, and maybe partnering with our security team as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page and everybody's really comfortable with what's out there. So just to kind of add on to what Philip was talking about.
Yeah, we have a few pipelines that are probably coming out, going to be delivered as part of this, but they're not matured and complete yet. So we'll have to kind of take that skeleton and start putting in, the things we actually want to happen, whether that's security hardening or automation for application deployments or different tools and tool sets. So really, it's an exciting time to come on board because it's going to be a major role in our organizational success, and you really get the opportunity to put a lot of fingerprints on it early on. Right? It'll really, you'll see the results of your work, very, very, very quickly, and not to get too philosophical, but
Let me piggyback on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So let me talk about the first couple months, what it would look like. So the first couple months would be landing zones at the finish line with our partner. So it would be benchmarking that against the Azure landing zone accelerators, so the documentation that they have in there. I've asked Presidio, our partner, to do that. I don't know if I should name names on the interview, but hey, here we are. And so I've asked them to benchmark that against the landing zone architecture that is presented and documented by Microsoft, and that's going to be part of a readout. And so it would be taking the documentation that they provided us, putting it into a standard format, and then getting it out on our repository, and then really using that to set up things like templates moving forward so we can start accelerating our adoption and then the comprehensive documentation of that. And then it would be working with individuals like myself to put together a roadmap, like a capability roadmap, to say this is where we are, this is what makes sense in the next evolution of that landing zone. And then start building out more of, like we had talked about, a mature a cloud presence, and that'll align that to strategy. So we're looking at hybrid in the interim, just like everybody. And so what does the ramp up, ramp out strategy look like, and tie that all back to capabilities within the landing zone. And just on the cultural piece here, I came from AWS myself, where I served as a field CTO. I really worked closely with a lot of companies to migrate their Epic systems, their EHRs, to the cloud. And so whenever they talk about the culture here, I came specifically for that. I had a friend that worked here that I thought he was overselling it, to be honest. And I jumped at one point, and I'm here, and it's everything and more that he talked to me about. And the only way I can say it is I actually enjoy getting up and doing my job. And
Nice.
I can't say it's been that way for a long time. And so it was work before. It's one of those things you really can't know until you're here on the internal. But I'd be happy to set you up with any references to say, yeah, this actually is a really enjoyable place to work, very collaborative place, and a place that they invest. And like they said, the world's kind of yours here, coming in the cloud space, because we're building it from the ground up. And so whether it's documentation or role or focus area, we can really tailor, and they have a history of tailoring jobs to meet the skill sets and the desires of the individuals. So it truly is an exciting, I've sat in interviews like, hey, it's exciting, come on, this place is awesome. Then you come in, it's like, just a train wreck. And it is just not that here. And so hopefully that's an encouragement.
Got you. Okay. And I mean, there's a difference between like hiring someone and someone that you hire in that's a rock star. Like, what would you say is the biggest things that separate those two kinds of hires from your perspective?
So I interviewed with another organization, and after getting through the interview, they said, we're just looking for someone that knows more than our vendors. And we want somebody that can come in there and know more than Amazon, Google, and Microsoft in the cloud space. And they were looking for unicorns. So when you say rock star, we're really looking for somebody that can come in, communicate effectively, understand the difference between perfection and moving things forward, understand through the lens of best practice, and really be able to navigate that cultural transition between on-prem thinking and cloud thinking. And so it's as much as a leadership and communication position as it is a technology position. And so the technology will come, and really we're just trying to find that balance between, for me, a rock star will be an individual that can come in and have that effective leadership that isn't abrasive, but really someone that knows how to navigate the different personalities that come along with any type of big technology change such as this.
Yeah, for me, I'll say that just as my management style. We're lucky that I have a team of technical skill set is almost a given. If it's not there, that kind of weeds itself out. But I'll say being able to balance that, things today operationally with not getting too stuck in the mundane and being able to still be forward looking and vision oriented and own your space. To me, that's where my idea of a rock star comes in, where I can take this and I can help move the company and culture forward, all the while balancing, the stuff that a role requires, right? You can have a very competent, successful employee that can do all the stuff that you need to do in a position, but if you're able to elevate the team and the mission and push us forward, I think that really sets people apart.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and yeah, from a Rockstar standpoint, I have a team full of those people, and so I can recognize those pretty easily. People that are able to collaborate, move things forward, listen, and understand. That's as important as actually being, super, smart, as actually being able to listen, actually understand the culture you're living in, and actually be able to support the people around you. It's that collaboration that moves us forward. So the technical piece of it, yes, that can exist. And if you have deficits in particular areas, organizations committed, to making you successful. And that's one thing I appreciate about our, executive leadership is they do what it takes. So, that's really kind of what I'm looking for on the team, someone that we can continue to grow with. And it wants to be a part of our family, because that's the way we've looked at it for many years. I go to work every day and I can serve, going to work and be a part of the family. So that's really kind of what I'm looking for.
Gotcha. And I know you guys mentioned AI as well too, as something on your roadmap or like presently in the works. Like, what would you say is a skill or tool that would be a good to have but not a need to have for this role?
I think an understanding of Python.
Mm-hmm.
So you have mentioned Databricks before, and everything's PySpark in there, in their different workbooks. And so whenever you kind of take the consolidation of code and you balance that against AI and what it's able to do through like your SDK and your coding assistants and all that, I think just a fundamental understanding of that code. Not that you're going to be doing it a bunch, but I find everything that we're doing in AI, especially in the machine learning space,
Mm-hmm.
it just all seems to point back to Python. As far as platforms go, we have Azure Machine Learning Studio and AI Foundry as our two core platforms for developing AI, whether it's predictive analytics or machine learning, or we'll just call it agentic work. I know there's a lot that falls under that. And we also have Copilot Studio, and so we're one of the top adopters when it comes to successfully rolling out Copilot Studio to the org. And so we have a lot of individuals that are in there working on developing their own bots and using it extensively. And so all the Copilot stuff that's embedded in Teams and all that. So there's that whole development side where we're doing things like developing predictive models for whether a patient's going to get sepsis in our medical center or whether they're going to fall. Or whether we're using some of the out-of-box ones through Epic.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of predictive models in there that we're using. And then there's the scientist self-service, like assistants, digital assistants, like the copilots. And so I think you didn't ask where we're deploying it, but somehow I turned the answer into that. And so that's where we're using it. But as far as like skills go or things that you would probably be interested, especially in the cloud space, would be we've chosen Microsoft as our strategic partner for the cloud space. Not that we're not AWS or GCP or not doing SaaS offerings for a lot of our other vendors, but as far as that core goes, where we have that hub so we can then network out to these SaaS offerings, Microsoft is that platform, the Azure platform, and within that we've really extensively deployed AI Foundry and ML Studio.
Gotcha.
Geez, I'd be a terrible interviewer. That was all over the place.
I think you did okay, Joe. You did just fine.
I took the long route to get there, so I apologize for that.
That's all good.
So Charles, what other questions, and to be respectful of your time, what other questions do you have for us?
Last question I have is, was there anything I responded with that would make you hesitant to move forward with me for this opportunity?
I didn't have any on my list. I thought you spoke very well to a variety of topics.
I'll just give one.
Very thoughtful. Appreciate all your responses. I'm definitely not as close to the Azure technology as well, but a lot of things that you articulated before Joel jumped on, made sense. So appreciate you being here with us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll turn that into a positive also. So we've had other interviews, and the answers you gave were so comprehensive. You ate up most of my interview questions. And so that's a huge compliment on that. And then just kind of the soft skill, your ability to pause before you answered was brilliant. I don't see that a lot. And so it really gave space to breathe and just your answers were comfortable and very thorough. So
And
just
not
congratulations on that. So
I appreciate that your answers seem thoughtful and responsive and not scripted. You know, a lot of times when people prepare for interviews or have been doing those, you kind of have a punch list of topics and buzzwords or concepts that you want to demonstrate. So it can be sometimes a little stilted. I didn't get that out of this one, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys' time, and it sounds great. Like that's everything I got on mine.
Great. So if you have any other questions you think about after the fact, feel free to reach out through Ty, I think, for this one. He knows how to get a hold of me and forward those questions. Happy to do that, and we'll provide him some feedback as quickly as we can. But definitely appreciate your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys as well.
It's a good conversation.
This has been great.
thanks a lot.
Sir.
Thank you, Charles. Nice to meet you.
All right, y'all have a nice one.
You do.
You too.